Hi, everyone. This is Ashley and Anna. Welcome to Not Your Typical Wellness Podcast. Our guest today, we are very, very excited to speak with the inimitable Nicholas Gregoriades, a master Jiu-Jitsu practitioner. He is an artist. He is a speaker. He is a coach. He is a wellness practitioner in many forms. So we're excited to speak with him today. Thank you for being here, Nick.
Thank you so much, Ashley. I got to say, for someone like you to say that I'm a wellness practitioner, that means I must be doing something right, because, you know, every time I see you, I always joke that you must sleep in the fridge because you look younger than the time before. And now seeing Anna for the first time, and I realize you guys are definitely onto something. So I want to hear a little bit about that at some point in our discussion as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Happy to share all our secrets. Nick, this is our first time speaking, and I was going over your website, and obviously you have an amazing podcast and a book. And, you know, from your bio, I was reading that you wanted something different in your life than the circumstances you were born into. And so that pushed you to travel outside of South Africa. And then you found yourself doing an ayahuasca ceremony in Peru. And I guess my first question is what pushed you into doing that ceremony? What was it that called you to trying that medicine for the first time?
So I think Ashley's probably heard this before because I've told it to her husband, Thomas, but I always just felt that there was something, you know, that movie, The Matrix, you may or may not have seen it. Morpheus says to Neo, the protagonist, he says, You've known it was there your whole life. You know, it was always there, like a splinter in your mind. And I always had this splinter in my mind, this gnawing discomfort that was like just something was wrong, and I could never put my finger on it. And then I did a very small ayahuasca ceremony, a short one in London, and I wouldn't say I got much out of it, but it was interesting, and it opened up my mind a little bit. And then just suddenly this voice just kept telling me, you've got to go to the jungle. You've got to go do ayahuasca in the jungle. And it just would not stop. It just wouldn't give me any peace. Like I'd wake up in the middle of the night and this voice would be like, you got to go to the jungle. You got to go to the jungle. And then a friend of mine, one of my best friends, called me up and said, hey man, I'm going to Peru to drink ayahuasca. Do you want to come with? And I was like, wow, okay. This is clearly a sign. And so yeah, I went for that 10-day trip to Peru and had the medicine there, and it was a very profound experience, incredibly profound. Like I always say that my life has 2 points. There was before that night, the night of the last ceremony, which was December 22nd, 2012, the last night of the Mayan calendar, and then after that. And I really look at my life. It was like that was the night I was born.
How did that impact the work you were doing with, or your practice in jiu-jitsu and what you were, you know, your other endeavors? Like, how did you come back to the real world after that? You know, how did you integrate that?
The thing is actually that it's so interesting that I got back to London, and I used to love living in London. I thought it was so exciting, and I thought I'd never get bored of that place. And I got back from this trip to Peru, and I was like, I can't live here anymore. I realized there was something in my frequency that had changed that was just incompatible with that frequency. And I remember my landlord at the time, he said, oh, I'm putting up your rent as well next year. And I was just like, okay, that's my cue. I'm out of here. So that's when I actually left London. And I'm convinced that change was precipitated by or caused by that ayahuasca experience.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like, I used to love New York, and then one time I went there, and I was like, I never want to come here again. You know, because your frequency somehow changes, and then whatever attracted you, it dies somehow or changes.
Yeah,
it's really interesting.
Absolutely. I think it's like I've come to this perspective that you guys, you've heard that expression, your vibe attracts your tribe, right?
Sure.
Yeah, but I think there's another side of it, which is what's not your vibe repels you, like just literally pushes you away. It's like when you take two magnets and you flip them around and try and push them together, They like just naturally repel each other. And I see that all the time when I meet people. I might think this is such a cool person, or I might like walk into a really cool environment, and if it's not like resonating with me, it doesn't matter how much I want to enjoy it or how much I want to form a connection with that person, it just won't work. We'll just naturally repel each other. And I find that super interesting to me.
Were you practicing yoga? Were you meditating? Were you doing all of these kinds of things before you started the ayahuasca experience?
Well, it's interesting, Ashley. Like what happened is, I haven't really spoken to anyone about this, but up until the age of about, I think, 19 or 20, I was quite a strict religious, like Christian, and my mom had brought us up in this very strict religious household. But I'd always thought some of it was kind of dumb, and like it never really like made sense to me. But I was so afraid of going to hell, like I just stuck to it. And then when I think it was 20 or 21, I was on vacation actually in London. I'd gone to take a vacation in London, and I picked up this book that was talking about all the errors in the Bible. And I remember that was the first little chink in the psychological armor around my belief system that appeared. And then eventually, like, I just could no longer believe that religion in the way it was taught to me. And at that point, I just was like, nah, I don't believe in anything. Like, I just was whatever. Like, I'm done believing stuff. I'm just going to be a scientific materialist. And then one day I was doing this meditation program, an audio meditation. It was I can't remember what it was called. I found it somewhere on some arcane corner of the internet and downloaded this MP3 file. And it was basically like this drum beat, this like really like heavy drum beat. And I thought, cool, I'm going to close my eyes and go with this thing. And I remember closing my eyes and falling into this kind of trance. And then it was the weirdest thing. It felt like someone like smacked me in the front of my forehead. Like someone just came and whacked me. Like literally like slapped me as hard as they could. And I remember like waking up with this start. And I didn't know what had happened. I was like, what the hell was that about? And from that point forwards, it's almost like it unlocked something in me. And I just became really interested in stuff that was out of the ordinary. And to answer your question, it's a long roundabout way of answering your question, but it was only once I really did ayahuasca that I saw that, yeah, okay, this is not just like a fantasy. This stuff is real. There is something on the other side. There is a veil between this world and many other worlds, and they do exist. It's not just people telling themselves that to make themselves feel better. It's not like they actually exist. So the ayahuasca greatly what confirmed that, and then greatly sped up my exploration of alternative methods of living and altered states of consciousness.
And do you find, like, when you're practicing jiu-jitsu, I don't really know a lot about it, but do you find that it's functionally a moving meditation, or no?
Sometimes, but it's difficult because it's a combative thing, and like I find that you can get there are glimpses of like you go into like a flow state, but generally it's quite Ashley's seen it. It's quite what's the word I'm looking? It's very physical and very intense and combative. So most of the time you're just trying to stop yourself from being strangled, and like, or you've got this big sweaty guy with his shoulder in your jaw and he's trying to crush your skull, and you're like, it's kind of hard to get all zen and blissed out when that's happening to you, so not really, no. If I'm honest. Yeah.
No, that's really helpful because, so many martial arts, whether they be like Tai Chi or Kung Fu, there is like a spiritual aspect to it. So I was just curious, like how that, how that shows up practically, like in your practice of jiu-jitsu.
I think it does show up in the fact that you have to be present. Like it's your performance degrades really quickly when you're not like 100% there. So in that regard, it really brings you into the present moment, because you're like, I wouldn't say fighting for survival, but you've really got to be present, which is always a good thing, or almost always a good thing.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense.
Yeah, I struggle with that aspect of jiu-jitsu and martial arts in general. that are combative, I feel like I've become hypersensitized to the violence in this world that we see everywhere, all around us. And, you know, Thomas and I talk about this all the time, and I have a hard time sitting peacefully with the sort of the entertainment aspects of combative sports. And, you know, he's like, no, but it's an art, it's a skill, it's a beautiful thing. There's so much to it, you know, and I recognize that and I respect it in that sense. But I'm like, but have we also become, you know, has it helped us to become desensitized to violence and, you know, combat in our society? Almost like, you know, people can't behave themselves. So this is why we can't have nice things. This is why we shouldn't have combat sports, because people don't know how to behave properly. I struggle with this all the time. I don't know if you
I was just talking to, well, I was talking to your husband, to Thomas. We watched UFC together, not this past weekend, but the weekend before. And right after we watched this UFC event, I showed him this YouTube mini documentary about CTE and MMA. And CTE is becoming more and more prevalent in mixed martial arts. And we both, at the end of it, we were discussing how, like, you know, should we really be watching these people destroy their brains for our own entertainment? And we couldn't really, with straight faces, say yes. You know, I mean, like, it is pretty barbaric, but I think it's something very primal. And I mean, look, in previous eras, it was worse. There were people fighting in arenas and killing each other, right? Like literally, like, or being fed to the lions. And you know, it actually, if you spoke about how you're sensitized to violence, and I think it's only someone who understands violence can really be sensitive to it. You know, so like, unless you've ever been punched in the face or like body slammed or like really known what it's like to get into one of these fights, like sometimes I watch it and I'm like, I'm cringing because I'm there feeling what these dudes are going through. And I think in a way it makes me very loath to get into any sort of physical altercation, because I know the costs. I know, like, man, like, this can go horribly, horribly wrong. And I think that's why trained people generally don't get into fights, because they know, like, this is not like you see on, you know, in the movies. This is a real thing that's really going to hurt and cause some sort of like maiming or injury, or it's. So, yeah, I think it could be argued both ways.
I think that's a really interesting perspective. And, you know, I guess when I see, I think it's the crowd that I see, like if I'm watching a fight and you see, like, if someone goes down and the crowd just starts to go wild, I think it's that aspect of, like, those spectators are the ones who aren't the, you know, who aren't the fighters, who haven't been there, who get so pack mentality.
And you know what the crazy thing is I understand what you're saying, because I remember the first time I went to watch a UFC event, you know, I used to think, oh, you know, these guys, just the bloodthirsty raving, you know, the crowd, right? It's the, what do they call it? Like the plebs, right? Like just the people baying for blood. And halfway through this event, I was screaming just as loud as every one of them. You know, like it's addictive. And like, yeah, you want to see action. You want to see the guy get knocked out, or you want to see this guy get his arm bent, or you want to, like, but having said that, I will also say that I think it is more of a male tendency or characteristic to enjoy combat. I just think, and that's not to, there's no like misogyny in what I'm saying. I just think it is generally, you know, we have more testosterone, we are more aggressive, and it's rarer for women to feel any sort of affinity for that. It does happen, but it's just rarer.
Yeah. No,
I think that's a fair statement. I don't, you know, and I think there's an argument to be made as well that, like, having a healthy outlet for that aggression too can help, you know, minimize it.
Sure. That's
out on the streets, you know, so to speak.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to know, do you guys, with Chinese medicine, do you are there any treatment protocols for people who are overly aggressive, or is that not a thing?
Yeah,
absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely. Treating emotional imbalances is certainly a major part of our medicine. And I think that is something that is, special about Chinese medicine, in that, the basic theories pay a lot of credence to emotional health and emotions. And, we study how emotions impact the physical form. So, I think in Western medicine, there's always been this separation between the mind and the emotions and the physical body. But in Chinese medicine, they're very much connected and they impact each other directly.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and not to interrupt you, Ashley, but it's also it's a symbiotic relationship too, because not only do emotions negatively impact the organs, but then healthy functioning of the organs should manifest a healthy emotional state. So so like if somebody is having anger or depression in Chinese medicine, you'll go, okay, I know there's something going on with their liver system, and I need to treat that either with needles or herbal medicine. So that's actually what really attracted me to this medicine in the first place, is because it isn't so reductionist as Western medicine can be,
Sure.
In terms of disregarding the physical impact of emotions.
Yeah, this is something I'd love to talk to you guys about. I think Ashley and I have touched on this at certain times, but, look, I'm sure everyone listening to this has heard this in one form or another, but generally Western medicine it treats symptoms, right? That's my understanding of allopathic medicine. Is just like, I'll take away the symptoms for maybe indefinitely, but the underlying root cause of what caused those symptoms to appear is usually not addressed. And I think it's something I've been paying very close attention to, especially living in big cities. I think Thomas and I were just speaking about this the other day, and modern life is not conducive to health. It actually takes an extraordinary amount of dedication and discipline and willpower to be a healthy person in the modern world. It's not the default. It's not automatic. You actually have to fight for your health. And I'd love to hear from you guys how you generally approach that, like with Chinese medicine. I'm sure it's not one size fits all, but I'm sure you guys can think of particular afflictions that are endemic to our modern society. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting that you bring this up, because I'm currently personally trying to readjust my modern life in order to help my health based on Chinese medicine. And I'll give you the short synopsis. So basically, in the original book of Chinese medicine, the Neijing, written 2,000 years ago, they say, you should sleep and eat according with the seasons. You should rise when the sun comes up. You should go to bed when the sun goes down. In the winter, you need to sleep more and eat more. In the summer, you can stay out later, and all these things. Okay. And this is basically sort of disregarded by Western medicine as like folklore mumbo jumbo. And so recently, actually, Western scientists have discovered, and the scientists who discovered this and won the Nobel Prize, that there are these things I think they're calling them the Chronos cells or the time cells. And that basically, if you can do this, wake up when the sun comes up, go to bed generally when the sun goes down. And they're also finding you eat when the sun comes up, your last meal is right when the sun goes down, that you can reverse not only cancer, but certain metabolic diseases. And so I have a totally screwed up schedule. I'm not a good Chinese medicine example. And so I'm personally trying to change my eating. So I'm eating during the day, eating breakfast, and then not eating at night in order to help like balance my liver system. And it is so extremely difficult. It is like, I have to put like conscious, extreme effort into it, discipline, exactly what you're saying. And just to support what you're saying is modern living is not conducive to health. In fact, it's doing everything it can to harm us, frankly. So actually, I don't know what your experience.
Yeah, it makes me think about the principles of yang sheng, which is the is nurturing life, which from this book that Anna was talking about, the Neijing, I mean, this is where these ideas come from, these ideas of, living a long, happy, healthy life. In order to do that, you have to live, like she said, in accordance with the seasons, eat, this way, these whole foods, and eat at certain times, and eat when you're peaceful and you're not stressed out and rushing. And it's also about cultivating energy and moving your body. And, and that's another big piece is that self-cultivation, that energy cultivation, which you do through things like meditation, through things like Qigong, and yoga is another great, source for something like that. But it's nurturing life. And, and it's bigger than that too. I mean, it's about relationships. It's about getting enough sleep. It's all of these basic principles of health that we know and that seem logical to us. But you're right. Our modern society has not taken these things into account in any way. And now it's like we're playing catch up, and people try and force themselves into health. But I think people go about it in a completely backwards way, because really we need to slow down and simplify.
Yeah.
And kind of go back to old ways of living, go back to less. And, we have this mentality of like more. We have to get bigger, stronger, faster, acquire more things, career success, but really I think there's an argument for stasis, stop, slow down, less, simplify, this kind of.
It's so interesting.
Reconnect.
You bring that up, Ashley. Yeah, like I'm. You sparked something in my mind. I saw on Instagram last night this little clip of this UFC legend. He was a champion, and then he retired about 20 years ago. And there was a clip of him like shadowboxing with his shirt off recently, and he's 57 now, I think. And I mean, my jaw hit the floor when I saw this guy, because he is ruined. Like, he looks like an 80-year-old man, like huge distended gut and like huge bags under his eyes. And he looked terrible. And he was talking about like his comeback thing. Like, he was shadowboxing. He was saying, I'm coming back. Haven't been doing anything for 12 years. And now I'm going to get in shape, and I'm doing carnivore diet, and I'm lifting weights. And I was just thinking to myself, he's just trying the same strategy that he did before, like, which is go. Like, Americans seem to be, it's infected the rest of the world, but it's really deep in America. It's this idea of like more is better, or working harder is better, or like torturing yourself is the way to health. And I saw this guy and just had so much compassion for him, because he's just going to fuck himself up even more, right? Like, putting himself on this extreme restrictive diet and overtaxing his adrenals with all this high intensity exercise. And it's just like, it's not going to help, right? So yeah, I'm interested in your opinion on that as well.
Exactly. Well, go ahead, Anna.
Well, what's particularly sad to me is like what I hear from that is like this feeling like that's the only way that I can gain value or love or acceptance too, is like, well, I have to be how I was before. I have to be strong. I have to be fast. I have to be fit, and then I'll be loved and accepted. And it's like, wouldn't it be beautiful as a 57-year-old man if he tried a new way and found love and acceptance in a new way, in a different way, and that's the painful part to me. And we all do it, it's, I need to be skinny enough. I need to have the right car, this, whatever, pick your poison. But it's all this like cultural grasping onto ideas of what's going to really fundamentally make us lovable, right? As opposed to just being lovable and happy.
Yeah, like this quest for happiness through the physical form, through youth, through stuff. And there, people aren't celebrating aging. in this culture, and or evolving beyond, just your physical form. And there's this idea that I know in like Taoism and many other religions and practices, I'm sure there's just this idea of your evolution throughout your lifespan, and this kind of pinnacle of your personal evolution is to recognize that you are so much more than your physical body, and that at the end of life, you're like preparing to move beyond this physical form. And so you kind of have to be detached from that and find happiness in other aspects of yourself and life. And, you're not really getting that. We're not really getting that messaging, I think, from media or popular culture or even religions, most, Western religions,
Totally. I think what we're getting is a fundamental disrespect for life, human life, and, life on this planet. It's fundamentally disrespectful to the precious human beings that we all are. Mm-hmm. Like, we're not somehow less than because we have wrinkles or gained 10 pounds. It's like we're still these miraculous creations.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so I really am not trying to be contrarian, and I largely agree with you, but I think it's a slippery slope.
I think my thought would be like, unless maybe there's somebody out there there's not, but I feel like we all have varying degrees of dysfunction, and like we all have our things that we're doing, and maybe when we all attain the rainbow body and of enlightenment, we won't. But right. And so if somebody, I think, carries their dysfunction in a way that's obvious, it doesn't make their humanness any less valuable, as opposed to somebody whose dysfunction is maybe very well concealed.
That's a good point. Yeah, I think maybe like without. I'll give you guys an interesting anecdote. So I was at Disneyland about 7 months ago with a close friend and mentor of mine, and it was an interesting trip because we had all partaken in some enhancements, I guess is the most politically correct way I can describe it. And we were having fun and walking around. And what I noticed, and it's so difficult for me to even say this because I don't want to portray myself as someone who. I'll just tell you the anecdote. So I turned to him once. I was in this hyper observant state because my consciousness had been tweaked by these enhancements, and I was just looking around, and the vast majority of the people in this park were like, they were overweight to a degree, but it was something more than that. It was like their bodies had no shape. They were like, and they were kind of these, like, they couldn't really walk properly. They were kind of lumbering like this, like these lumbering kind of. And I remember I turned to my friend and I said, "Man, like, do you see this as well? Like, am I imagining this? Like, these people, like, they don't really look like the tradition, like humans in the traditional sense. They seem to be, like there's some sort of deviance that's happened here, right? Like," and he said, "Yeah, I noticed it as well." And then I said, like, "I hate being judgmental about it. I'm not trying to be judgmental." And he stopped me and he said, "Judgment is the beginning of discernment." He said, "There are times when you have to make judgments, right? You have to look at something and be like, there is something wrong with that. Like, we have to judge child abusers. We have to make judgments on that, right? We can't just be like, oh, love and light and Rainbow Road and everything. Like, we have to say that there's something wrong with that, right?" And look, I'm not a specimen of health. I'm in good health, but I'm definitely not like you guys, and I'm not like Thomas. So I'm not putting myself on some sort of like high horse. But I do look at, it comes back to the beginning of the conversation we're having, and I look at modern society and I see that, like, physically as a species, it's causing us to devolve. And that's no one specific individual's fault. Like, when I see the person who weighs 450 pounds on a little scooter in Walmart, I don't judge them. Well, I do judge them. I make a judgment. That's not healthy, but it's not like them at their core. I'm like, there is something wrong here. There is some, like, issue here at play in the society that we have to address, right? And that is not okay for human beings to be like that. It's not okay, right? It doesn't mean I think that they're a bad person, and I understand that there's probably something so deep in their psyche about how they were denied something in their childhood, or they lived from a place of scarcity because they were abused, and I don't look down on them. I'm just like, damn, this is not, it's not okay. It needs to be addressed and helped, right?
Yeah. I mean, I can't say I disagree with that.
No. I mean, it's representative, like we've been talking about, of a I think a dramatic imbalance in our society, in the way we live our lives, in our understanding of our bodies and our health, and how to exist in a balanced way with our environment, because this environment that we've created over time is not helping us. Like you said, you have to fight for health, and not everyone has an equal fight, or an equal amount of fight, or the equal ability to fight, perhaps. Not to say that we shouldn't, I think, strive for balance and ultimate health, because I think there's probably I believe there's a connection between, physical health and our happiness and our ability to, live our lives to our fullest potential. So
I agree with you, actually.
I think it's something we should strive for. And, I don't know. I think that ultimately modern life just really challenges our ability to be happy as humans,
It really does. I have, while I have two, if you don't mind, I'm going to segue this conversation just a little bit. I've never had two Chinese medicine masters in front of me. I've always only had one, which has been Ashley, or another Chinese medicine doctor. I wanted to ask you guys, because you both studied at the same time, if I'm not mistaken, and you both worked together running your very successful Chinese medicine practice. What were your biggest misconceptions about Chinese medicine that you discovered when you began studying that?
Do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first?
You go, Anna. I have to think about that.
I didn't really understand that it's a full medical practice. So it's an observation-based medicine, and it can treat everything. And I didn't really fully understand that when I started. So we're just like Western doctors, in the sense that obviously we can't do the same things that Western doctors do. However, it is an observation-based medicine that aims to treat the total body. So if you have menstrual problems, or migraines, or you broke your arm, or whatever it is, it's a full medical field. And then I think the biggest misconception that I also see about Chinese medicine is people think it's just an energy-based medicine. And that's not really accurate. It's both. It's a physical and an energetic medicine. And I think when people say like, oh, it's just balancing your energy, I think that does a disservice to the medicine. So I think those were my two biggest sort of misunderstandings before I started.
Yeah, I agree with that, Anna. And I would say for me, I had experienced it personally, and it had a really profound effect on my health. And that's kind of what inspired me to pursue it, because I believed in it so passionately. But as I started to study it, I didn't realize that there were so many layers, I guess, so many layers to the medicine, so many rabbit holes. And it can be very frustrating and challenging, because when you're trying to learn this medicine, you really want things to hold on to, like rules, hard rules that you always apply. But it seems as like the more you learn, the more you realize that there's always a different way to approach a condition, or a patient, and there are many different ways to practice this medicine. There are many different styles, many different approaches in the sense of needling, in the sense of you can use herbal medicine, like many modalities. It's very complex, but it's also very, very simple, because ultimately it comes down to living, living in harmony with nature. These are kind of some of the like most fundamental principles of it.
So you guys, it's my understanding, please tell me like if this is accurate or not. you guys have your practice is a wellness practice that is based on the foundation of Chinese medicine, but you also deviate from that a little bit, right? Like you'll add in whatever you feel works, right? Is that accurate?
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Well, I'd just be really interested to know. I mean, what I'm always looking for in my life is like leverage points, because I've just been so impressed by how you can find a leverage point in something you're involved in, whether it's a project or a field of study or a practice, and that leverage point can increase your results like 5, 10, 100x sometimes. So, I'm someone who doesn't get Chinese medicine often. I probably should. I did one session with Ashley, which I really enjoyed, but I haven't been back because I've been too busy. What I'm asking is, do you guys have any like hacks, like leverage points that you could just tell anyone listening, including myself, that would instantly improve the quality of their health?
That's a really good question.
Like, I mean, I'm guessing like drinking water like is one of them, or like everyone talks about stuff like that, but I'm sure you guys have got even more arcane and powerful knowledge than that.
Yeah, I think if you can't get acupuncture on a regular basis, which a lot of us can't, I think a good herbal formula that's like suited, that you've had an herbal consultation for and is suited to your needs, can be life-changing, frankly. And it doesn't have to be like complicated. It can be, just a tea that you make in the morning, and that can change your life. So
that was interesting. I've noticed like, I think it comes, you guys, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I noticed cordyceps. I take a very strong cordyceps product, and man, that thing, there's supplements. We all take so many different supplements, and sometimes you've got no idea if it's working or not. And every now and then you take one and you're like, wow, that thing definitely makes a difference. And for me, cordyceps is one of those. I noticed my lung capacity and my endurance since I started taking that it's just night and day. It's totally different. That is a Chinese mushroom, Chinese right? Or a Chinese? It is.
Yeah, I'm actually taking it right now too.
Blend, Nick, is that our blend? Is that our Endure blend?
No, I didn't even know you guys had a cordyceps blend. Otherwise, I would have bugged you for some.
I can talk to the owner, see if we can get you a free one.
Yeah, so twist my arm behind my back. I'll definitely take you up on that.
We created an herbal formula for the runners at the Malibu Half Marathon this year. So we actually did a podcast about it.
You told me about that. Yeah, I see. Yeah. Okay, and that's got cordyceps in it as well?
Yeah, and a handful of other Chinese herbs that help with lung capacity and recovery and oxygenating the cells. And it's a really wonderful formula. So yeah, we'll see if we can get that.
Thank you. I would really love to try, but that cordyceps experience, that to me really opened my eyes to the power of supplementation and not chemical supplementation. So yeah, thanks for sharing that one. That was a really cool one. I think I need to come to you guys and get like a full like profile analysis done, and then you can recommend what formula I should be taking for myself, because I really believe in that at the moment.
Totally.
Absolutely. And, you can do that over Zoom as well. Like that's the beauty of herbal medicine. You can, talk to someone, we can have a conversation with someone and gather the information that we need to put together a formula. So you're right. And I agree. Herbs can be very, very powerful. I also think another thing that, if people can get acupuncture, I think a really important and powerful principle is to use it before you have a problem. Using this medicine preventatively is incredibly powerful and preventative. Just that. I mean, it is an incredible medicine for balancing your body and keeping problems from arising, chronic, acute injuries, diseases, imbalances, what have you. It just fortifies you, strengthens you in a really sustainable way. It's not like, coffee gives you energy. It's like actually like cultivating your energy and balancing your immune system and your hormones, which all of these things come into play, with chronic diseases and all kinds of other problems.
So would it be fair to say that Chinese medicine, would it be accurate to say that Chinese medicine believes that chronic diseases are just an imbalance that's continued for too long and ultimately become something chronic or something acute?
Yeah, that's pretty much the long of the short of it. Sometimes you can be genetically set up for something. So, but again, that's why the preventative treatments are so helpful. The saying is that genetics loads the gun and then your environment pulls the trigger.
Yeah,
so,
I heard that.
Yeah, so if you can, nurture what you have now, but basically a shorthand way of thinking about it is an imbalance that's gone on for so long that it becomes then an illness.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So I'd love to ask you guys in the context of I'm just using an example because I know it's what you're working on at the moment. I know you guys have if I'm not mistaken, a fertility program where you've been having great results helping women get pregnant. Generally, can you pinpoint that down to one thing that causes that, and that, or is it a multitude of factors and that's different for everyone? Or
well, I think it's different for everyone. So we always put the ladies that we work with on an herbal formula, which helps, helps their stress level, helps actually their uterus tone, the tone of their uterus. Helps with circulation. And then acupuncture has been shown to help women conceive, maintain pregnancies, and then have a healthy labor. And there's several ways that it does that. One of the primary ways that I feel like is so just completely disregarded in Western medicine is stress. Stress has been shown to pretty severely impact a person's ability to conceive. And so acupuncture immediately puts your body into the parasympathetic state, your rest and digest state. So if you are living in a stressful society like Los Angeles, you come to acupuncture on a regular basis, you're training basically your body how to be in a rest and digest state. The other thing that acupuncture does is it'll balance your hormones. Western medicine has shown that through several studies. They don't understand why from a Western medicine perspective. But if you have a hormone imbalance, Chinese medicine can help balance it. So for somebody who has like PCOS, for example, acupuncture has been shown to be really impactful for that, obviously along with diet, of course. And then finally, it also increases circulation to the uterus. Well, I guess not finally. It improves egg quality. It improves sperm count and quality. So if you're having any issues with that, am I missing something, Ashley? Did I hit them all?
That was perfect.
Yeah.
It's so interesting to me because, look, again, I don't have kids, so I'm not exactly the poster boy for this argument, but it's my understanding that most of the time when people are struggling to have children, they'll immediately go and use Western avenues like IVF, right? But it's generally if the organism is not reproducing, it's logically, to me, it makes sense that is indicative that the organism is not in optimum health because just like it's the species kind of survival strategy to only propagate healthy duplications, right? It makes sense to do something like that, to do Chinese medicine and get yourself as healthy as possible before, if you're having an issue with fertility, right? Because I remember I met this really interesting guy in Australia many years ago, supremely healthy individual, the healthiest. I always joke, actually, he and Thomas are the two healthiest people I've ever met, right? And I remember he was giving us a lecture and he was saying healthy people are always horny because the organism is saying, yeah, this is good. We're good to go. Let's pass it on, right? And that always stuck with me. And I've looked at my life and realized, when I'm stressed and run down and not feeling great, my sex drive is in the toilet. And when I'm feeling great and in my parasympathetic nervous system and feeling, good, let's go, right? So it makes sense to me that you would address the health of the organism first and then reset and try to reproduce after that. And then if that doesn't work, okay, then let's go nuclear and do IVF or whatever the next option is.
Absolutely. No, that's absolutely the way I think that's the healthiest way to approach it, for sure. And another factor I think that people don't often consider is the impact on your body after you have the baby. I think a lot of people are so laser focused on just trying to get pregnant and trying to have a baby, and not enough emphasis is placed on what kind of toll that takes on your body to have a baby, and then the potential trauma in the aftermath. And if you're not healthy going into that, you're really creating a potential for some very real challenges, potentially devastating challenges in your postpartum period, and also leading into menopause. In ancient texts, they never talked about menopause. And some may say, oh, maybe it was like a longevity thing, like people weren't living long enough. But no, I mean, people were living beyond what we would call menopause, but it wasn't such a rough transition. It wasn't expected to be a painful, horrible time of suffering that women just had to endure. It was a much smoother shift into your post-reproductive years. And I think that a lot of that had to do with the way people were living. And this goes back again to just the lifestyle, right? And so just to
that makes total sense to me.
Yes. To go into it in, a state of optimal health as optimal as you can be is ideal, and you're really setting yourself and your child up for greater health in the long run.
Like from a Chinese medicine perspective, are people still expected to have very high levels of energy if they're healthy and well into their 40s and 50s? Or I just love some illumination on that.
Well, there are definitely herbal formulas that would help with that and give you actual healthy energy, not like coffee, for example, like Ashley was saying. But, Chinese medicine talks about stages of development, right? Ashley, you're going to have to help me out to get the actual ages right.
7 years.
The 7 years of development.
It's actually really depressing. Because I think that by like 30 something, basically all your teeth should have fallen out and you are done. You're toast. You kind of think it was this breakout was done thousands of years ago, right? So people were aging, I guess, more quickly, But
the idea is that, yes, there are ways to cultivate your chi. For example, yes, there are things that you should be doing that can help you have as much energy as possible. And yes, you can live to 100 and live healthily and die peacefully in your sleep without being in a nursing home. And Chinese medicine would say that's 100% possible. And yes, you should be achieving that, and you can achieve that. And I think Chinese medicine would also say, life is a beautiful flower that blooms. And just like a flower that blooms, you have the stages of the bud, and then the flower opens, and then the leaves fall off. And that there is a natural cycle to that. And so you can, like I said, cultivate your chi, cultivate your life force, take care of yourself. And there's a cycle to your life that is unavoidable.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Beautifully said. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I've never heard that flower analogy. That's pretty deep.
Yeah.
Well, now whenever I look at flowers, I get sad because I'm like, oh, I'm going to die one day.
Yeah, you just fucking ruined flowers for me. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. How romantic.
Nick,
I know.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being on our show.